Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into an absolute epic of survival, divine wisdom, and honestly, the incredibly complex reality of human nature. We're looking at the story of Prophet Musa, or Moses. He's a figure revered across major world religions, someone who carried this unimaginable weight of leading his people out of the chains of slavery and into freedom. It's a story just packed with awe-inspiring miracles, really profound tests of faith, and some surprisingly timeless lessons on leadership and human nature. So let's set the stage.
Okay, let's dive into this. Just imagine the sheer terror for a second. You've literally just escaped a lifetime of brutal subjugation. You're stumbling through the dark, clutching whatever belongings you could carry. You finally hit the edge of the Red Sea, this massive, impassable wall of deep water. And then you glance over your shoulder. The horizon is just thick with the dust of the Pharaoh's advancing army, charging right at you. The panic kicks in. There's zero way forward, and absolute certain death is racing toward you from behind. How on earth do you survive that?
Part 1. The Great Exodus from Egypt, Fleeing the Pharaoh. To really wrap our heads around this terrifying predicament, we have to rewind a bit. For years, Musa performed miracles. He begged the Egyptians to release the Israelites. Time and again, the Pharaoh would promise to let them go. Then, he'd break his word. Finally, the sources tell us God commanded Musa to just get his people out. The pressure was intense. It's the dead of night, secret departure. The Israelites grab their things and run. But morning breaks. The Pharaoh wakes up and realizes his massive captive workforce is gone. He is absolutely furious, a fit of pure rage. He mobilizes his ruthless army to hunt them down. By daybreak, the Israelites are completely cornered at the shores of the Red Sea. The fear was thick enough to cut with a knife. One of Musa's companions, Yusha, literally cried out that they were doomed.
Part 2. The miracle of parting the sea, divine salvation. But staring down this impossible barrier, Musa didn't panic. Where everyone else saw certain death, Musa saw a divine promise. He just waited. And the physical reality of what happens next in this epic is just stunning. God commanded Musa to take his staff and strike the water. Suddenly, this fierce, howling wind kicks up. The sea actually starts to swirl and spin. And then, miraculously, the waters part. A totally dry path opens right up through the middle of the seabed. As Musa leads his people across, these massive waves are just frozen there, towering like mountains on either side of them. The Israelites make it across in total safety. But the Pharaoh? Arrogant as ever, literally pretending to be a god himself, he shouts to his men that the sea had opened for him, and he foolishly rushes his army right in after them. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate tragedy of unchecked arrogance. Right when the Pharaoh hits the midway point, those towering mountains of water come violently crashing down. Realizing his absolute defeat, the Pharaoh finally screams out his belief, surrendering to the one true God. But, it was way too late. The curtain dropped on his tyranny. His lifeless body washed up on the shore, which the sources point out was the ultimate proof to his people. The man they worshipped couldn't even save himself. He was never a god.
Part 3. The story of Prophet Moses, the 12 tribes, and water distribution. The wisdom of the springs. Having barely escaped the Pharaoh, this massive crowd is now staring down the brutal reality of a harsh desert. The scorching sun is just beating down, and severe thirst grips everyone. And right here, we really need to focus on a very specific number: 12. The Israelites weren't just one big uniform crowd. They were made up of 12 distinct tribes. Now imagine managing a massively dehydrated population of that size in the middle of nowhere. It's a logistical nightmare. The potential for absolute chaos, infighting, and resource hoarding was incredibly high. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how ingeniously this whole crisis gets resolved. The people are crying out, right? So God commands Musa to strike a rock with his staff, and from that one single rock, exactly 12 distinct springs of water gush out. By dedicating one specific spring to each of the 12 tribes, a flawless distribution system is set up instantly. This divine solution elegantly and completely bypassed any arguing over who gets what. Every single person knew exactly where their water was coming from. No disputes, no fighting. This whole moment out there in the desert really lays down a timeless principle about water rationing and equity. The sources point out how this perfectly aligns with later Islamic teachings, which emphasize that out of water, God made every single living creature. It reinforces this incredibly deep-seated respect for natural resources. It's a powerful reminder to us that sharing equitably and strictly avoiding waste, even when water seems completely abundant, are actually sacred duties.
Part 4. The Trial of the Golden Calf, a Test of Faith.
Now, despite all this incredible divine generosity, they had clouds giving them shade, miraculous food dropping from the sky called manna, the Israelites were still a deeply traumatized, broken people. They were used to a life of slavery and, unfortunately, very easily swayed toward corruption. And this sets up their biggest test. Musa gets ordered by God to climb Mount Sinai and fast for 40 days before receiving the divine laws, leaving his brother, Prophet Harun, in charge. But 40 days? That was just too long for this restless crowd. They start acting impulsively. And right into this vacuum of patience steps a guy named Samiri. He convinces everyone that Musa has just abandoned them. He gathers up all their gold jewelry, melts it down in a fire, and forges a golden calf. It's almost unbelievable, right? After literally walking through the parted sea and drinking from miraculous springs, the people immediately fall to their knees and start worshiping this metal idol.
When Musa finally comes down the mountain carrying these sacred divine tablets, he walks right into the sight of his people dancing around a golden calf. He is absolutely consumed with shame and fury. He throws the tablets to the ground, grabs his own brother Harun by the beard and hair, and just demands to know why he didn't stop them. Harun's desperate defense is heart-wrenching. It really exposes the terrifying power of mob mentality. They were completely out of control, and Harun literally feared they were going to kill him. Seeing that his brother was genuinely helpless, Musa swiftly pivots into a total masterclass in crisis management. First, he calms his anger toward Harun. Next, he directly confronts Samiri, banishing the manipulator into permanent, lifelong exile. And finally, trying to repair the bond with God, Musa picks 70 of the best elders from the tribes to go up the mountain and repent. But even then, human stubbornness gets in the way. The elders literally demanded to see God with their own eyes before they would believe Musa. For that sheer arrogance, they were instantly struck dead by thunderbolts and an earthquake. It was only after Musa tearfully begged for forgiveness that God actually resurrected them.
Part 5. The Legacy and Death of Musa, a Faithful Heart. Because of all these continued mistakes, the Israelites were actually forbidden from entering the Promised Land for many years. They were condemned to just wander the desert. And throughout these grueling years, Prophet Harun passes away, leaving Musa to bear the immense, exhausting burden of his people's ignorance, all on his own. He suffered so much, entirely just to guide them to safety and truth. Finally, as those years of wandering wrap up, the time for Musa's death draws near. Knowing he wouldn't lead his people into the Promised Land himself, he makes one final, really touching request, just to die close enough to the Holy Land to at least see it from a distance. And God granted that wish. Looking out from Mount Nebo over the Dead Sea toward Palestine, this is the exact landscape Musa gazed upon in his final moments on earth. So the crucial point is this. Musa is recognized as a messenger who carried one of the heaviest divine missions in history. If you go to Mount Nebo today, there's a memorial honoring the man who spoke directly with God. Despite facing the absolute tyranny of the Pharaoh and honestly, the relentless draining flaws of his own followers, Musa passed away with a completely contented soul and an unbreakable, faithful heart. Which leaves us with a really profound final thought to chew on. Prophet Musa dedicated his entire life, bearing the ignorance, the endless complaints, and even the betrayals of his own people, all just to deliver them to safety in a higher moral ground. He sacrificed his own peace for the collective good. So looking at his epic legacy, we have to ask ourselves, in our modern lives, what sacrifices are we truly willing to make for the betterment of our own communities?